You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is July 22nd, 2026, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region, and news from a liberty perspective. This particular show, we are going to touch on kind of a nexus of fraud. We've talked about people like Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe in the past, but they were recently at a committee hearing held by Rand Paul in Congress. And so a lot of interesting stuff came out of that hearing, I thought. And so I wanted to share some of what was in that hearing, a few related fraud stories, something in relation and how this is impacting maybe your life, whether if you're in California or Minnesota. Kennedy, RFK, has essentially halted $1 billion in Medicaid payments over this fraud issue. And then there's some issues too of the voting fraud in the SAVE Act. New Jersey had just uncovered 6,600 people who were on the voter rolls who shouldn't have been, which is kind of miraculous coming from a blue state, actually finding issues of people who shouldn't be on the rolls. That's almost like finding a leprechaun or something. Anyways, before we get on to the show, let me introduce you to our panel. With us today, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. Well, we always like to start off the show with a Liberty quote of the day to get us going in the right direction. And this time it's one of my favorites, and that is Walter Williams. So Walter Williams, it's actually kind of one of my favorite quotes, and he talks about it, and it really gets to the heart of what charity is and why government really has no business doing it. And he said, the act of reaching into one's own pocket to help a fellow man in need is praiseworthy and laudable. But the act of reaching into someone else's pocket is despicable and worthy of condemnation. And so this really gets to the heart of what is charity, and what is help. And I mean, the morality of it comes from the act of consciously doing it, right? It's not about, outsourcing it to government and having government sort of figure out who's worthy and who's not. It's about you thinking about who you should help and who needs help. And that's what charity is all about. And there's a virtuous feedback loop in that too, because you can see if what you're doing is really helping somebody, or if it's not, you can stop, right? Government, as we're going to talk about quite a bit in this show, government puts out a pot of money and claims it's to help people, and God knows what happens to the money. And they just keep saying they need more. And you also, when you hand something to somebody to help them out, one thing that's absolutely almost surely required is a thank you, right? I mean, you would expect it. If you went to give somebody a hand and they didn't even thank you, you probably would rethink helping them, in the future. But when government does it, there's no thank you, right? And the government doesn't thank you when it takes the money from you. And oftentimes the people who take the money from government don't really thank the government either. So there you go. Anyways, Leon, what is your thoughts on this Walter Williams quote? Because I really like it.
Well, yeah, without a doubt, the first part of the quote is clearly, I think, something universally that we can all agree on. But the second part of the quote, really and truly involved the theft of labor. Now, people may think that I can't see properly and I don't understand what I'm looking at. But all the money that we have, we did not steal it. It came from our labor. And that's how we develop a little bit of wealth for ourselves and our family. And the government comes along and tells us we have to help someone else, someone that we have no input into their lives. So the government take taxes from us. They call it taxes, and it's something that we should all be paying our fair share. And they make it all sound so nice and wonderful. So they take it away from us before most of us, before we even see our paychecks. And they do their thing. They take their cut, and about 19 or 20 cents of whatever they take from us end up with the recipients of our hard work. Now, the point is, though, even though this system is legal, it is theft. Just like slavery was nothing but theft of labor. And Massa enforced that theft using a whip. But in modern day America, we still have the whip, but we call it the IRS today. Okay? They take our taxes, and if we don't pay it, they'll send out the whip. We end up in prison, in jail, or whatever fines they want to administer for not paying our taxes. And this is how modern day Massa enforces the theft of our labor. And if you are a religious person, this thing that the government does to us is forbidden in the Bible. It really is. If you look at the 10th commandment, it clearly said, don't covet your neighbor's stuff. Not at all. Nothing that belongs to your neighbor. So charity is good, but forced distribution of our labor, when we are forced and compelled to do so, is downright immoral. And if you're really religious, you'll say downright evil. There's nothing wrong in trying to help your fellow man or woman. Absolutely nothing wrong. And I think it's something that I would encourage us to do. Do more individually, or organize with your church or with some civic organization, whatever it is, however you choose to do it. That is great. It's a very noble thing. It's when we are forced and compelled to sound very compassionate, when the government uses a whip to enforce that compassion that we have to show by giving up our labor so that they can do whatever the hell they want with it. That is not compassion. That is something else.
Well, and consider too the what's missing when government does this. I mean, because even if government actually wasn't just wasting most of the money that it's giving away, or there wasn't a ton of fraud as we're seeing in a lot of these places, one of the things that's missing, and it's almost the soul killing part for a society, is there's a lot to be gained when you feel like you helped somebody personally, when you actually had the act. The first part of what Walter Williams saying is when you saw a way you could help somebody else and you reached into your own pocket and you figured out how to help them. There's something just vitally important to society, I think, when that act occurs. But that act can't occur with a third-party government coming in and doing it. I don't think anybody has ever felt that same good feeling when they wrote their tax check, in April to the IRS, right? I don't, everybody's figuring out how to either get more or less, back from the government, or how to get more back, or how to avoid paying more. I haven't ever heard of anybody say, "Oh, I want to help so much, let me reach in and give extra to the IRS."
But Jason, you're raising a very important point. But we have to go a little step further to really clarify the point that you're making. I think it's a very important one. You're absolutely right that when we are forced to pretend that we are compassionate to our fellow citizens through the whip of the government, yes, it kills our soul. The giver, it kills our soul, because the charity that we would normally give, we don't normally feel like doing it after the government forces us to pretend that we are compassionate. It kills our souls, the giver, the actual person who work hard for and try to acquire a salary and gain some wealth. It kills their soul. You're absolutely right about that. But on the other side of that coin is the recipient, who is waiting for the government to distribute to them our hard-earned labor. And the recipients, it also kills the recipient's soul, because the recipient gets to the point where they become dependent upon it. And it is soul killing, just like you said. because the disease of dependency overtakes the recipients. That disease of dependency destroys the very nature and the soul of our human existence. Because right now in America, as we speak, there are working age individuals all over this great land of ours who are sitting around waiting for somebody else to go to work, give that money to the government takes its cut, and then gives it to the recipient. And what the recipients get is about 19 or 20 cents out of every dollar that I give or you give to the federal government and the state government or whoever else takes money from us to taxes. But the soul killing is on both sides of that equation, the giver and the recipient.
And the government, it certainly kills the soul in many ways. But I mean, this is one of those areas where I think it's man is naturally meant to it's sort of a self-healing, right? I mean, when you feel like you're helping each other in society, it's a goodness that just simply can't come from government. It has to come from people making personal decisions, and we lose that with government, because even if you do have some resources left over after government comes in and takes its cut, you still have had a lot of that ability taken away, and displaced by government coming in with its hand first. So anyway, that's just, something I wanted to throw out there. And I think it's relevant because almost everything we're going to be talking about in the rest of the show here is related to all of these government programs that are meant to sound like they're helping people. And in reality, it's kind of leaving us in a bit of a mess, I think. So let's let us go to the particular committee hearing, I guess, that Rand Paul had recently in his committee. I think it was about a week or so ago that he had this, and he had both Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe there, and there was some other guy, we'll show his stuff too, that the Democrats invited, but all three of them were there to talk about fraud and issues of ways to combat the fraud that have come to light specifically because of people like Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe. That's why the Republicans had them there. So I wanted to start off by showing, we're going to do this a little bit in chronological order. The entire video is about an hour and a half long, and it's out there. We're not going to show all of that. We're only going to show about 10 minutes in total from this in pieces of what different people were saying at that hearing. But I think it's going to be instructive, and I really like some of the messaging that I hear coming out of this. So we'll start with Rand Paul, a senator that I very much respect, who's one of the few real liberty-oriented guys in Congress, and this is a pretty appropriate hearing, I think, for him to be doing, and I think you'll see why as he intros it, the way he puts together his opening comments. So let's go to Rand Paul's opening comments.
In my office, I keep a clock that measures our national debt in real time. This morning, that clock stood at nearly $40 trillion. Washington taxes the American people. Washington borrows against our grandchildren's future earnings. Then Washington sends billions of dollars out the door, often without knowing who receives it, if any service was performed, or even if the business exists. The federal government loses hundreds of billions of dollars to fraud every year. And when the money disappears, politicians act surprised.
So Rand Paul paints a dire picture of how far we are in the hole and how discouraging the problem is.
No private business would survive this way. A bank confirms an account exists before wiring the money. A credit card company flags suspicious changes in seconds. An insurance company verifies that the patient exists and the treatment occurred before paying a claim. They verify first because it is their money that's online. But when the money belongs to the taxpayer, Washington pays first and asks questions later.
So Rand Paul clearly painted the difference between when money is spent privately versus publicly, and the fact that we tend to be much more careful when we spend our own dollars than the public money. Now he's going to get into the specifics of some of what happened, what Nick Shirley uncovered in Minnesota.
Prosecutors have now charged 15 people in Minnesota with schemes involving more than $90 million. One autism services scheme alone, $46.6 million in fraud. The Justice Department calls it the largest Medicaid autism fraud case in its history.
So next, Rand Paul is going to lay out exactly what it was that both Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe are being brought in to talk about.
Mr. Shirley followed the money. Mr. O'Keefe followed the signatures. Both found the same machine, a system that rewards volume, discourages scrutiny, and depends upon someone in authority looking the other way. In one system, government counts the claims and sends the money without asking who received it or what work was performed. In the other, officials accept registrations without asking who signed them or whether the process was legitimate. Whether Washington is distributing taxpayer dollars or safeguarding the ballot, government processes first and investigates later. Then years after the damage is done, announces an indictment and expects applause. Fraud is not an ordinary cost to government. It is theft, theft of taxpayers' earnings, theft of needed services, and theft of the legitimate vote.
Finally, Rand gives credit that they would not be having this hearing if it wasn't for the work of independent journalists like Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe.
Our witnesses went where government investigators had not gone and asked the questions the bureaucracy refused to ask. I thank them for their relentless commitment to exposing fraud and demanding accountability. The American people deserve better from their government, including Congress, who keeps writing the checks.
So there you go. That was the opening of this. And by the way, he talked about the clock that's in his office. Here is the U.S. debt clock, just to kind of remind everybody, because so many people, I think, had hopes when every time a Republican wins that this debt clock is going to go in the other direction.
Yes,
it never does, because it's going to keep going up when a Democrat wins, and every time a Republican wins recently, that's been the case as well. So you can see here in this upper left-hand corner, the debt is fast approaching $40 trillion. And what that means, if we were to divide that up per taxpayer, that means about $360,000 if you're paying taxes is what you owe if we were ever to pay this thing off, which I don't think is ever going to happen. So anyways, any thoughts, Leon?
Well, I mean, this is really highlighting a major problem in our society, a society that is getting to the heart of our very republic. I mean, when you really think about it, $40 trillion is not pocket change we're talking about here. I mean, we are really mortgaging the future of our children and grandchildren on this reckless spending that we are doing. I mean, the government is growing larger and larger, and this size of government is choking off everything. So when they want to hide $1 million here and $1 million there, the government is so large, it's so easy to do it. To give away 2 or 3 million to this one, 5 million here, 6 million there. It's so very easy because government is so large. The problem we are facing here is a grave threat to our liberties. And that is happening because of the size of government, especially the federal government. But the state government.
Oh, sorry, Leon. I'm having some visual problems with the camera. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. The state government for you and I, we live here in California, I don't think it's very different. I mean, they're small, obviously, but in terms of squeezing upon our liberties, they're just as good as the federal government. So we have to do something about this debt problem we have. It's killing the future of our children and grandchildren.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, we're going to be we're eventually, like you said, we're going to hit a wall here. Well, so we've heard Rand Paul's initial take on this, and of course he's a Republican, and he's a little more of a libertarian, I like to think, but still he's a Republican in name anyways. And he's the one running this hearing. But the senior Democrat also had a witness that he called up, and they have slightly different views on this. So let's watch the video of that person. His name is Gary Peters. So he's a senator. I'm not sure where he's from, but he's
Michigan.
Michigan. Okay, well, that's pretty close to a lot of this fraud. So, anyways, let's pull up Gary Peters and hear his intro here.
The government has a responsibility to ensure that taxpayer dollars are used efficiently, effectively, and responsibly, which is why we need strong controls. A strong oversight of government spending to ensure taxpayer dollars are going to help the American people and not the fraudsters. Our federal government had more of these strong oversight mechanisms up until last year, when President Trump fired 19 independent inspector generals in violation of the law. He removed experienced independent investigators with a strong record of identifying waste and fraud.
So this is Senator Gary Peters, who is the senior Democrat there. And a side note, most of the Democrats didn't show up for this particular committee, but he is making this more about the issue that Trump has fired the inspectors generals, which was one of the first things he did when he came into office. But as we're going to see throughout this discussion, those inspector generals were there for quite a while and all through Biden. Why wasn't any of this stuff coming up then?
If this committee is serious about tackling fraud, I hope we could work together to hold the administration accountable for the ways in which they have undercut independent oversight and fulfill our own role to conduct oversight of the administration's actions that have unquestionably enabled fraud. We need to restore the strong, experienced, independent watchdogs who have a proven track record of fighting fraud and getting money back for the American people, rather than amplifying sensationalized social media that takes a more focused on getting views than on actually getting the truth.
Out of the gate, he immediately starts attacking the journalists who have brought all this to light, in the sense of Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe, by talking about sensationalized journalism. Well, that journalism is the only reason they're there. And he's going to start trashing Doge as well. We didn't show this clip, but he also accuses Trump of committing fraud with respect to personal fraud with respect to cryptocurrency. But you can go check out the entire video to see some of that.
On top of that, President Trump created Doge and let inexperienced staffers, led by Elon Musk, make arbitrary cuts across the federal government. Doge was supposed to save $1 trillion. Instead, their reckless cuts caused chaos and may have actually cost taxpayers more in the long run, as the administration had to rehire workers and reinstate contracts that they canceled.
Oh, sorry, Leon. Hold on just a second. You're trying to get
Okay.
on. Okay, I think the camera's coming back on. Nope. Hold on a second. Hold on. Let's see if we can get that. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I've got a camera on. It's not the camera I started with.
Okay.
But whatever. We're going. So anyway, so that was Gary Peters. Any thoughts on what he had to say, Leon?
These people are a bunch of nasty hypocrites, okay? The national debt is sitting at almost $40 trillion. This Gary Peters, I'm sure he's been in Congress for quite a while, maybe 18 years now, maybe 12 years, maybe 18 years. I'm not sure, but it's been a while. All of these guys been sitting there in Congress all of these years, don't do a damn thing about the explosion of the debt, nothing. But Trump comes along and he tries to do something, and then all of a sudden, everything is Trump's fault, okay? Now, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump, but the fact of the matter is, he's the first president that I'm aware of who actually, well, Ronald Reagan probably did try, but he wasn't very successful, who actually is trying to do something about the size of government and actually trying to do something about the national debt. But that one have not gone in the right direction as yet. But trying to do something, shrinking the size of government, getting rid of some employees, trying to cut down the departments, the Department of Education, which I think is a useless agency in government, trying to do these things. Okay, he's not making as much progress as I would like, but he's trying to do something. And here these hypocrites coming on, oh, Trump is doing this, he fired this person, he did that, and he did that. But they will do nothing about the debt. All they want to do is to keep on spending money, buying votes, and calling it compassion of fellow Americans. This is insane.
And in all fairness, I mean, I think you can make a legitimate argument that Trump is a bit of a big spender himself.
True. No, I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm not going to.
But he certainly, at least something like Doge happened under Trump, even though maybe Trump didn't stick with it, like some of us would have liked to have seen him stick with it. But
Yeah.
he still, it did happen. And the idea that these guys are running these attempts to shrink government down instead of, celebrating the fact that anybody tried anything, right?
Yeah.
And then to top it off, just hearing this guy denigrate Nick Shirley and just social media, just to brush it aside, like, hey, that's nothing. Right? With these people are out there, they're independent journalists. They don't have a big organization behind them, and they're bringing all this attention to government fraud that we haven't seen. And the idea that you're going to trash them, I mean, it just it's blow them off like, oh, it's just a bunch of social media sensationalism.
Right.
Just seems a little bit nuts. Well, anyways, let's hear from Nick Shirley now, as he is sort of like the it's hard to say when you got James O'Keefe and Nick Shirley on the same stage, which one is the center of attention. But I think at the moment, you'd probably have to give it to Nick Shirley at the moment. So he's the one they started out the hearing with, and so let's hear his testimony. This is just an edited version down of it too.
When we talk about fraud, we are talking about money that is being stolen from hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. This issue has nothing to do with political parties. No dollar says Republican or Democrat on it. When a fraudster commits fraud, he or she steals from all of us.
I like that he starts off with fighting fraud should be nonpartisan. Let's hear about some of the work he's done.
Last December, I published a 43-minute-long video exposing widespread fraud in Minnesota. That video became one of the most viewed videos in internet history and gained over 4 billion views in just 7 days across all forms of media. The fraud was so obvious that the fraudsters weren't even trying to hide it. The infamous Quality Leering Center was born, and that video has become one of the most consequential videos in American history.
Has Nick's work made a difference?
By the amount of legislation it has created. Since posting it, over 30 bills have been created and introduced in Congress regarding fraud. A new fraud task force has been created, and Treasury is working on new systems to stop fraud.
I just realized we're almost out of time for public access. So usually I don't start these videos right in the middle, but because of my technical difficulties, I forgot here. So anyways, if you're watching us on public access, you're going to have to tune in online to knuckleheadsofliberty.com to hear the rest of the conversation and what Nick Shirley was saying there, because we'll play that again over there. And you got James O'Keefe and a bunch of other stuff. So check us out there at knuckleheadsofliberty.com for the rest of the show. So back to the show. So I'm going to jump back into Nick Shirley's video. I'm not sure if I can advance it to where it was before, but anyways, it wasn't that far along. So let's go back to it.
When we talk about fraud, we are talking about money that is being stolen from hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. This issue has nothing to do with political parties. No dollar says Republican or Democrat on it. When a fraudster commits fraud, he or she steals from all of us.
I like that he starts off with fighting fraud should be nonpartisan. Let's hear about some of the work he's done.
Last December, I published a 43-minute-long video exposing widespread fraud in Minnesota. That video became one of the most viewed videos in internet history and gained over 4 billion views in just 7 days across all forms of media. The fraud was so obvious that the fraudsters weren't even trying to hide it. The infamous Quality Leering Center was born, and that video has become one of the most consequential videos in American history.
Has Nick's work made a difference?
By the amount of legislation it has created. Since posting it, over 30 bills have been created and introduced in Congress regarding fraud. A new fraud task force has been created, and Treasury is working on new systems to stop fraud at unprecedented levels. I helped ignite a war on fraud across the country. People often wonder how come this fraud became so big and how come it became so rampant. And the reason is because no one actually ever really looked into it. When Elon Musk offered to help by creating Doge, people burned his factories, bombed his cars, and politicians even celebrated his company's stock going down. Elon was right when he said the fraudsters complained the loudest.
It's another interesting aspect to all this is, as Nick is saying, that if you are one of the people exposing the fraud, you become attacked, like Elon Musk with Doge. Nick also talks about how he is being attacked for his work in California.
After Minnesota, I exposed widespread fraud in California within the daycare and hospice community, where an impossible 1/3 of Americans on hospice care were set to die in Los Angeles. The next day, the governor, Gavin Newsom, posted an AI-generated image of myself trying to mock and discredit my work. Only days later, he and his attorney general both tried to take credit for exposing the fraud. Now the attorney general's wife has created a bill that would make it criminal to expose fraud. The Stop Shirley Act, also known as AB 2624, will help fraudsters cover up their crimes and prevent themselves from being exposed, specifically in immigrant communities.
So what are the numbers in California with respect to Medicaid fraud?
In California, Medi-Cal, their Medicaid program, has now more than doubled from $108 billion in 2022 to a proposed $222 billion, while enrollment has only rose by less than 1%. The system is filled with bad actors and fraudsters.
So what's Nick's final take in his role in all of this?
And I'm just one person doing the work of many people. If the government and media is not going to do their job to help America, it's the responsibility of strong men and women, however old they may be, to do it. I'm doing it. Despite the threats and burdens that come, it must be done. I'm doing it with the help of everyday Americans that government paid officials are supposed to do. And the media teams across the country have millions of dollars to do this, yet they don't look into this fraud. They've actually quite literally failed us. If we as Americans do not stand up to protect our country, we will lose our country.
So I really liked, what I'm hearing there, because it seems to be getting to the point that, getting to the truth that, media, our journalists have to be playing some kind of role in correcting the course of the ship, and that's what he's saying. I mean, look, if I'm not doing this, who's going to do it, right? And this is, I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Leon?
I think we have spoke a little bit about this before. When the media in our great land have chosen a side, the corruption just festers and grow. Because here's Nick Shirley, a young kid. He looks like what, in his early 20s or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? He is exposing a deep fraud within our society. Minnesota, California. I hear he's going to other places also. All over the country, we are seeing this. Some of it is quite obvious and blatant. We had the Luring Center in Minnesota. The people who are defrauding us can't even spell the words they're trying to spell. It is so blatant and obvious. And the media tries to always minimize it. They always, well, it's not as widespread. It have a few incidents of fraud, yes, it is true, but it's not as widespread. And the minute it goes into a community that is potentially, that may be Black or of foreign origin, then the names start racist, xenophobic, and on it go. Like in Minnesota, a lot of the fraud, I think they say about 85%, somewhere around there, a lot of the fraud is among the Somali population. And we don't know if that congresswoman is involved with it, Ilan Omar is involved with it, but she represents a lot of the districts that contain a lot of Somalis in Minnesota. And the thing is that the media is out there trying to minimize it. They're trying to tell us it's not as bad as it looks. This guy is uncovering billions and billions of dollars of fraud. But no, it's not as widespread. It's not a big deal. We're making too much of it. All these things about conspiracy theories. This is a big danger. The media, who is supposed to be objective, have taken a side, and they're taking the side of the left. And this encourages more fraud to come upon us. This is a serious theft of our labor. And the media is just trying to look the other way as much as they can.
Yeah. Yep. It's kind of a polarized media where we have a small pole on one side and a huge pole on the other, and that huge pole tends to be all those people with journalism degrees from,
yes,
it doesn't even matter which college you say, because pretty much every college journalism department is going to be left wing.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah. So
I don't know. That you raise that point. I've never really checked this, and I really should. I don't know that there's any journalism department in a major school in America that could be considered somewhat on the right. I didn't know I don't even know if such a thing exists.
I would almost imagine it would have to be an explicitly conservative type of school like Hillsdale College or something. I don't even know if they have journalism degrees there or not.
I don't know either.
So, yeah. But anyways, yeah, that's and the funny thing is these guys like Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe, I don't believe either of them have journalism degrees.
Exactly.
So, in fact, that was one of the funny things. I wish I would have had that clip, but when Matt Taibbi was in front of Congress, and that terrible woman from the Virgin Islands, I think it was, who was one of the Democrats who's not like a real representative, because they're just territory or whatever. But, she is questioning this guy, Matt Taibbi, who is a, award-winning journalist. And she said, so-called journalist, because they're just because he's not on with the program, right? He's not on with the Democrat program. So now they're just so-called journalists. So,
but this is always the game plan. The minute you hear somebody like James O'Keefe or Nick Shirley or Matt Taibbi, any one of them comes up and they bring something to light and they go in front of Congress, you always have the Democrats there trying to discredit them. I know some of these guys are left-wing guys. Matt Taibbi is on the left. And yet, as soon as they bring out something that the Democrats don't like, or the left don't like, or the discrediting begins. And they will go after these people to try to make them they're some kind of evil person who trying to harm the country and blah, 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 and all kind of damn nonsense. It always happens. That's the game plan. And that's what they're trying to do right now to O'Keefe and Nick Shirley. I mean, it's... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, when you say on the left, people like Matt Taibbi or Michael Schellenberger or some of these, they're the type of people we would have called on the left 15, 20 years ago. But the left has clearly moved to something that's insane today.
Yes.
And so these guys have kind of stayed put. Now they look like they're on the right, but they're just kind of doing what they've always been doing.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So anyways, well, that was Nick Shirley's bit. Now let's hear the testimony of James O'Keefe. And this one is on fraud, but of a different type of fraud. This is voter fraud.
Right.
And it, you might say that this had potential impact on the recent mayoral race in Los Angeles. I guess we'll see as far as that goes. But James O'Keefe had a video that resulted in at least one person being arrested already for voter fraud down there, and hopefully there's some other cases coming as well. But anyways, here's James O'Keefe.
In February of 2026, I disguised myself as a homeless person and approached a petition circulator on Skid Row near San Pedro and South 6th Street in downtown LA. I saw cash clipped to his shirt, which I thought was odd. The petition circulator told me, we're going to need 14 signatures and we're going to pay you $2. One of our reporters, disguised as a heroin addict with track marks on his arm, asked the homeless, what's going on here? They all replied with one word, money.
So there you have it, cash for votes. And believe it or not, $2 for a vote is quite a bargain.
We recorded a woman named Brown handing over cash as payment in exchange for a homeless person to register to vote in a federal election. Now that is a federal crime. Congress expressly criminalizes payments to people to register to vote. Why? Because the vote is sacred. It's an act of conscience, of judgment. And when it becomes contaminated by incentives, when it is for sale, it undermines the sanctity and fairness of the process designed to elect those who represent us. Our investigation contributed to a federal criminal prosecution, with U.S. Attorney Bill Celia saying, once I saw these videos, I went to work.
I think the most important takeaway from that clip is that O'Keefe is saying that, hey, look, they weren't going to prosecute until O'Keefe brought evidence to the prosecutors. So the government wasn't out there getting its own evidence. He had to bring the evidence to the government.
Everything I've testified to you here, all the quotes and many more, are all recorded on tape. So the question before this committee is not whether the fraud exists or whether it's happening. Oftentimes in politics, you all debate the facts. The facts are what they are. The question is why the incentives allow it to flourish. There is money in fraud, but there's no money in exposing the fraud. And when laws are ignored without consequences, fraud becomes the incentive. Fraud becomes the model of life. Tony Moore, one of the coordinators for the ballot petitions, told us if there's no consequences, it doesn't matter. And that's the point.
So we have concentrated interests using money to purchase votes to capture the concentrated powers of government. Let's hear O'Keefe's final thoughts on this.
I don't have subpoena power. Us journalists don't have the power to do anything but expose. And they campaign in this building about freedom and protecting democracy and preventing disenfranchisement and how nobody is above the law. But if those principles are not enforced, when they're violated in broad daylight, they're not principles at all. They're slogans. And without accountability, our notion of freedom is just an illusion.
Yeah. So there you have James O'Keefe, and he is sort of become a well-known undercover reporter, somebody who kind of gets the gotcha pieces and stuff. But he definitely got somebody in Los Angeles and in this fraud. And you know, well, I don't know, Leon, what are your thoughts on what he just got done saying?
You know, I mean, you know, Jason, the thing is that we know the fraud exists. I mean, just like James O'Keefe said, we know it exists. They have quite a bit of it on video, you know, but I don't think anything will come of this until we have real accountability. Yes, he said that there's one investigation or one person was arrested and apparently somebody's going to be tried or all that kind of stuff. But all of these people doing these things have to be tied to a campaign or to some larger organizations. When are we going to go after these people? That is what I want to know. Like some of this stuff was going on in LA I believe during the mayoral race. So which campaign were these things tied to? They must have been tied to somebody's campaign. These people couldn't be out there just handing out money like if that money fell from the skies like manna from heaven. I want to see real accountability. I want to know who are the upper echelons of this fraud and when they will be prosecuted. Or the same thing is true in Minnesota. Yes, we have heard a lot of people have got arrested, quite a few actually. They talk about 15 there and there's 10 before that and whatever and that kind of stuff. We're hearing about people getting arrested. But do you hear about anybody of worth? Anybody who's like a congresswoman or a congressman, a governor or a lieutenant governor, or somebody up in the upper echelons? These people must have been aware. You cannot tell me that they were this incompetent, that they have all this fraud going on. Let's take Minnesota as an example. We could use California too. You cannot tell me that they were so incompetent that all of this fraud is ongoing for years and nobody saw it. Really? It really means that politicians, the people we elect to represent us, are seeing this fraud and turning a blind eye to it. Mm-hmm. And if that is true, and I believe it is, somebody needs to go to jail for these sort of things. That is when we start have real accountability. Otherwise, all this is just a show.
Yeah. Well, and you can certainly see, you know, with like the Ilhan Omar, what's the mayor's name over there in Minneapolis? Fry, I think is his name.
Fry, yes.
Yeah, and then of course you have Tampon Tim. Yeah. But I mean, most of these people have lots of pictures with them yucking it up with these people who are now either being tried for fraud or having been convicted already of fraud. Yes. And they're acting like they didn't know anything about it. And even with Ilhan Omar, there was that weird discrepancy where she was claiming that she had worth of like $30 million. I thought
up to $30 million, yes.
Yeah, 30 million. And then suddenly somebody said, "Hey, how'd you get so much money so fast?" And it said, "Oh, accounting error."
Accounting error. There we go again. Accounting error. I want to know who is the accountant that made such an error. I really want to know that. If this was an accounting error, she's trying to imply it was an innocent mistake And accounting is not my thing, so I didn't realize it. Okay, fine. I want you to tell us who the accountant is, okay? Because I want to get him on the oath and let him tell us about this gigantic error he made. I mean, this is massive. You're talking about up to 30 million. Now she's filing her new filing said, I think her net worth is less than $100,000 or something like that, some nonsense like that. And before you're up to $30 million, how can an accountant make that kind of error? I really would like to know.
Leon, when you're buying land with money from these programs back in Somalia or Kenya or wherever, it gets really crazy what it is you have to report and what you don't have to report.
Well, I heard that it was reported somewhere that some of this money that is being that's been taken fraudulently in Minnesota ended up in Somalia with a terrorist group known as Al-Shabaab. That's what I heard.
How do you report Al-Shabaab on your taxes? You know, I mean, let's be real, right? You've got to be a little bit creative in how you. So you can see how you could make some errors here and there. You know?
Yeah, that one might be a little bit tricky to maneuver, right? It might be a little tricky to maneuver. I gave Al-Shabaab $10 million.
But it's so hard to find, a tax person who has experience with those types of write-offs.
Yes.
Oh, you got to expect some errors here and there. but one of the other things, though, that I was hearing from both Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe is that, the incentives are all wrong, right? I mean, there's plenty of incentive for somebody who wants to defraud the system, right? I mean, it's easy money. And we're going to see another story later on about some people who are turning this into a tourism thing from state to state about how to steal money from these programs. But it's so you can see the obvious incentive there. And the incentive for these politicians appears to not be there as well, because they're spending federal government money, not state taxpayer money. And so they, because the money has magically taken out of their constituents' pockets, sent to the federal government, then it comes back from the federal government in the form of Medicare or Medicaid. It's like there's nobody on the hook. It's just Uncle Sam, and everybody's cool with stealing from Uncle Sam.
Yes.
So that's the problem here that we're having. The incentives are all wrong. And if you're the journalist, where's the incentive for you? I mean, you've got these places like Nick Shirley was talking about, California. The governor's coming after you if you try to report on his fraud, right? I mean, you sit there and he, here was the, let me pull back up the thing. This is the governor's, his own X page or Twitter page, if you still want to call it that. And, Nick Shirley is trying to report on fraud, and Governor Newsom decides, well, let's turn him into a pervert.
This is so sick. I mean, this is our state, and we both live here. This is so sick. Yeah. And no, not only this governor stuff, but he also spoke about Rob Bonta, who's the Attorney General of California. His wife is in the assembly, and she's trying to put together a law to cover up the fraud, to criminalize people who uncover fraud. Yeah. This is insanity.
Yeah. And they discussed that more in the hearing. We just couldn't show everything. In fact, one of the things that comes out of the hearing too is they start to talk about, well, some of these inspector generals that you're relying on, they've been working on this stuff for years without making any, so they've been there supposedly watching everything for years, where this guy like Nick Shirley comes along and suddenly, and I will admit, Nick Shirley really wasn't even the originator of a lot of these stories. He just made them big, and it was like you did have some local news agencies who were looking into these, but when Nick Shirley put it out, it blew up. Everybody suddenly saw the Leering Center. In fact, even the local news agencies didn't catch that here's a daycare center that can't even spell learning. In fact, let me bring back up the image of the Leering Center. This is the infamous Leering Center that made Nick Shirley, you know, one of the top dogs in this stuff. And here's an image of them trying to repair the sign after Nick Shirley exposed it. So they papered over it and said learning, and it didn't even look right. It had a different background and everything else. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if this is just a theft, you know, ring, nobody is really looking into this, you know, about, gee, would I want to send my kid? Well, nobody was really sending their kids there. That's the point.
Exactly.
Or if they were sending their kids there, it had nothing to do with learning. I mean, don't you even think a kid, if he was actually learning, would look? I mean, I know when my kids, when they were growing up, they always wanted to point out things that adults got wrong, right?
Yes.
And I mean, if a kid is coming up there every day, they're going to say, gee, isn't that spelled wrong? And they would have been just jumping up and down, pointing it. Of course, none of that happening there, right? Because,
Exactly.
you know, it's not about the learning what's going on there.
But you know all these little things. I know, you know, we're laughing about this learning center versus learning center. You know, it gets back to the point I was trying to make. So don't these state agencies in Minnesota, and I guess here in California also, and wherever else Nick Shirley is going, don't they send out auditors? Don't they send out inspectors to look over these things to see, well, you know, this is out of place, that is out of place, you know, like they do with, they always supposedly send out these inspectors to like restaurants. They don't send these things out to people who's supposed to have learning centers. They never did any of that.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm thinking twice about those inspectors going to the restaurants now.
No, it makes me wonder. You're right. No, it makes me wonder. What are they inspecting?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Maybe they never go there and they just write up reports. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder. But you know, when we showed the autism thing, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, when we did a show on that, one of the pieces I thought was really important that a local news show had done, and I didn't see it on anybody else's stuff really, was that they had the reporter, and he was sitting there asking the woman who was in charge of this stuff. He says, have you guys ever sent anybody to these locations? I mean, has anybody ever verified that these places actually exist? And she said, you know, well, you know, we're getting there. You know, it's like we're getting to that. They've been sending money to these places for years without ever even having sent somebody to make sure that this is a real location. And that's what we're seeing. In fact, I'd wanted to show, there was some video from Ohio welfare, or some of this Medicare fraud as well. The Daily Wire put something out, and I was hoping to have time to edit something from that, but I just didn't get enough time to do it. But, you know, they're showing that's a red state. And yet some of the same things that are happening in California and Minnesota are happening there as well. These big medical buildings that just have a bunch of empty offices and checks coming in, you know, mail slots and everything else. I think the main reason why they're probably, you know, holding back more on, well, we'll talk about this later in the program, but why Kennedy is right now, he's signaling out Minnesota and California, is because, you know, maybe they feel like they're getting a little more response from the leadership there in Ohio rather than in California and Minnesota, where they've been fighting tooth and nail to keep the fraud going. So, you know, to the point where, like you said, the Stop Nick Shirley Act, it wasn't actually called that, but we talked about it on the show before.
Yes.
It's literally to penalize you if you're trying to report on people providing these services to migrants if they feel uncomfortable. Right?
Yes.
You know,
Imagine
they
that.
can force you to take your journalism down. Well, who the hell's going to report on it if you could be sued, if you could be, you know, attacked by the California government for doing your reporting? I can't even see how that passes First Amendment muster.
It won't. You know, it won't. But I mean, it will slow down. It will slow down the process, and you know, of course, you know, some of the journalists might be a little bit leery to to continue doing their work for a while. But there is no way that bill is going to pass constitutional muster. No way. I can guarantee that. But it could interfere with the operations for a little while.
slow down people like Nick Shirley before November, right?
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
all the things they might have done to show fraud before
Yes.
November. Any roadblock that our corrupt governor here in California can throw in the way, he's going to do it. So, anyways, so let's hear from we just heard from James O'Keefe. Let's hear what the Democrat expert is saying, who they brought in. So gosh, I'm trying to remember the guy's name now. Well, you'll see his name on the placard, and this guy has, apparently testified and been doing this for a while. But his take's a little different than Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe. So let's hear what he has to say. The guy's name is Dylan H. Gaudet.
And I'm the acting vice president of policy and government affairs at the Project on Government Oversight. We are a nonpartisan, independent watchdog organization with 45 years of experience in promoting accountability, transparency, and effectiveness in the federal government. Recently, the Government Accountability Office issued a report in which it estimated that in fiscal year 2025, the federal government issued $186 billion in improper payments, bringing the total of improper payments issued since fiscal year 2003 to $3 trillion or thereabouts. GAO also estimated that in 2024 alone, we lost somewhere between $230 and $520 billion to fraud. Lastly, GAO tells us and projects that if we were to work harder to eradicate duplication, fragmentation, and overlap in federal government programs, we would be able to save $100 billion a year.
So this is the Democrats' witness that they brought in to testify on fraud. And the guy has a resume. And I like the fact that he is starting off by framing the scope of the argument. But you can't help but see the irony that Democrats' expert witness for fraud and waste in government is literally blind. So anyways, let's hear what his suggestions are on how to deal with it.
First, we must look to internal watchdogs and oversight practitioners, such as Inspector General, the Government Accountability Office, the Office of Government Ethics, the Office of Special Counsel, and others. And we must strengthen, empower, and fully resource them to perform their essential functions as the taxpayers' eyes and ears from within the federal government.
And just as with Democrat Senator Gary Peters, he is going to take shots at Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe. The irony is these are the guys who are literally shining a light on the waste, fraud, and abuse, and he is going to take a crap on them.
The upshot here is that waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption are real, and they are pernicious, and we must do something about them. The only way we're going to solve them is by some of the reforms and others that I have laid out here today, but we're not going to solve them by focusing on sensationalistic anecdotes, clout-chasing viral internet videos, or provocative pseudo-documentaries. We're also not going to solve these problems by demonizing and scapegoating specific communities and constituencies based on partisan, political, and ideological agendas.
So I like that. He characterizes what people like O'Keefe are doing as pseudo-documentary.
Yeah, pseudo-documentary.
Of course, this guy has been apparently doing this job for a while. And, one of the things that came out in this too, by the way, like I said, this whole committee hearing was an hour and a half. So there's a lot of good stuff. But one of the things that came out is some of these inspector generals have been around doing this stuff since Nick Shirley was just a kid in school.
Exactly.
And Nick Shirley, look where he's at now. Look at the attention he's drawing. These other people, it's like they're invisible, right? These inspector generals. What the hell have they been doing? It's sort of like, the idea that, you're going to have a government inspector who is got the right incentives. I mean, ultimately, the government inspector has the same incentives that government has, right? And so if government is falling to corruption, why would you assume that the inspector within the government is somehow going to be pure? It makes no sense. It's not that you wouldn't necessarily want to have somebody who's doing this, but you need more, or you just need to simply reduce the size and scope of government, which is much better. Then it's easier for everybody to spot, and there's a lot less for these inspectors to keep track of. Anyways, well, what are your thoughts on that, Leon?
Well, I mean, it gets back to the main point, right? Is that the government is large and growing, and there are always more places to hide any nefarious acts that the government want to engage in, whether it's to give out money to these crooked centers in Minnesota or crooked centers here in California, or any such thing, or even at the state level. It's the same thing here in California. I mean, our government have been growing larger and larger and larger, and our state government, that is, and they're doing the same thing, giving out money to all sorts of people. Even the governor's wife now is involved in some of the scandal. I don't know how far that is going to go. Something involving diaper, some diaper program or something like that.
And that's a perfect example, Leon, because once again, it gets back to, our quote of the day. And let me just bring this back. I mean, what is Newsom's wife's, what is the current scandal she's involved in? And that's that, she's somehow tied to this diaper thing, right? Does it have to do with one of the people who's on her board or something of her charity? All these charities or whatever the hell they are, NGOs, they're getting money from the government, right? To supposedly help people. And this whole diaper thing, it's what's his name? The guy who's running for governor is the Republican.
The Republican or the Democrat?
Our Republican here in California.
Steve Hilton.
That's right, Hilton. So he had he was one of the first out with a video that was we showed it on the show, in fact, where he was skeptical of the program because the price of the diapers was like, it was like 5 times more or something what it would cost a person if you just handed them the money to go to Target and buy some damn diapers. So I mean, that's and the idea that somehow nobody's seeing the grift there, and people like Newsom are, anyways, it's just horrible. And of course, her organizations are also getting money for some of this propaganda that's going into the schools to confuse kids about gender identities.
Exactly.
Right. It's just like one thing after another. Anyways, you go ahead, Leon. I'm kind of
no, but the thing is though, but the grift is that this woman is involved in these programs, and these programs are funded by the government, and a government that is headed by her husband. And this is a conflict of interest, is a nasty grift. No matter what you want to call it, it's all bad. And the problem is that these so-called inspector generals, we have the equivalent here in California also, nobody's is exposing these things. And now we have Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe trying to do something. And what we're trying to do, the media, the media and our friends on the left doing everything they can to destroy these people. Nick Shirley has to have full-time security now because he is exposing these things. Why isn't he doing a civic duty that these so-called journalists should be doing? But Nick Shirley now have to protect himself.
Yeah.
My God, what's going on? We're going to lose this republic. We're going to lose this republic unless we take care of these things. Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, just think about California, the 20-something billion dollars that nobody can track on homelessness, right. That is just gone. And yet we have more homeless people here than we had before.
Right. Yeah.
The bullet train to nowhere that has sunk over $20 billion. And for what, and they're saying, it's going to cost a lot more and it's going to be a lot slower than we promised. and of course, Trump is trying to claw back about $4 billion of the federal dollars, I think, that went into this thing. So, this is just nuts. It's one thing after another that if we've got inspector generals, they seem to be just as bad as the people that they're supposed to be watching.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because it's where the hell?
They're all paid by the same people, so why would we expect anything different?
Yep. So,
God.
Anyways, so there you go. So I did want to show one other person from this hearing, and like I said, there weren't many Democrat senators there. It was mostly Republicans, because the others they just didn't show up, right? And that's part of the issue here, right? The reality is these guys really don't care about that issue that much, other than wherever they can attack for political points. That's why most of the attacks are going against Trump for getting rid of the inspector generals, and maybe there's something to that, but the bottom line is, clearly they wouldn't have been the solution here, right? I mean, the solution is the journalism that we need, people really with a motive to dig in on this stuff. So anyways, here's Ron Johnson, senator, and I really thought his comments really kind of got to the heart of kind of what we were hearing from all these people. So let's show that.
So we've had in testimony and opening statements a couple jabs, I guess, at Nick Shirley's videos. The only reason that we're taking fraud seriously is because of that independent journalism sitting in front of us. The fact that he exposed in all its gory detail how grotesque and how blatant this fraud is, how rampant it is.
So this is Senator Ron Johnson, Republican, noting that it's only the work of Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe that have really brought this to a head. Now here he's going to address the Democrats' witness there on his ideas for dealing with the fraud.
So, Mr. Heller Gaudet, listen, I agree with most of your prescriptions here. The problem I have with all the prescriptions is it hasn't worked. The lowest estimate I hear fraud in the federal government is $250 billion a year. I think you said 230. We had in a subcommittee hearing LexisNexis saying it's $1 trillion. It wasn't really until this administration with DOGE, which is, that effort's also been denigrated here, that we started going in there and actually doing something about it. Now,
so here you have Ron Johnson just really hitting the nail on the head that, although these ideas of government oversight are wonderful in theory, the problem is that they just haven't worked, right? I mean, we've been having this problem of fraud and waste being built up to this $40 trillion mark over years and years and years. And so, I mean, he's really driving home the issue that, obviously the more you can get out of government, the better. But if you can't, you really need those independent eyes of journalists who have different incentives than one government agency looking in on another government agency. So anyways, let's hear Johnson's final shout out to Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe.
I commend you on your phenomenal journalism. I'm, quite honestly, when I saw that happening, I go, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't my staff do those videos? Journalism is crucial to this. You're a partner in what we need to do. And it's only because of those videos that expose that we have any chance of trying to rein in this beast. But
so there you go. I highly recommend everybody to go watch that. There's several different channels, Forbes, the channel we were showing there as well, and a couple others that are out there on YouTube that you can just listen to the whole thing. It's about an hour and a half long, but a lot of good stuff in there. So I think though we did a pretty good job of summarizing the highlights from the thing. Did you have any thoughts on Ron Johnson before we move on to how this is actually playing out with RFK?
The last thing he said is of vital importance. We have to find ways to rein in this beast, this monster. We have to. I mean, and there's only people like Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe and there are a few others out there also. These are the people who will help us get a hold of this beast so that we can manage it. Because right now it's totally under control. Fraud is 250 billion, 250 billion, 300 billion. We don't even know. We don't even know what the number is. So we have to get control of that beast, of that monster. We have to, otherwise we are lost.
One nice thing that came out of the hearing, and we didn't show this clip, but Ron Johnson, he had asked a few questions from both Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe. And one of the things James O'Keefe told him straight up is, hey, look, there was this one website that we saw that had all this voter information on it that we saw these fraudsters using, but we couldn't figure out exactly what was going on with it. And we would need the subpoena power of somebody who has that in order to be able to see what's in there. And Ron Johnson publicly promised that the subpoena power that he has in this committee will be behind whatever efforts that Nick Shirley or James O'Keefe needs. So hopefully they follow up on that. Hopefully James O'Keefe is making good use of that.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, certainly we're going to need it if we don't have that SAVE Act. We're going to totally be relying on people like James O'Keefe to be policing this.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, yeah. Anyway, so let me show just. I think there was one other case of Minnesota fraud recently that was reported in the news, and I just want to show that before we get to Kennedy and what he's doing about it. But you can see that, look, this stuff Nick Shirley has blown up, and there's been all this investigation, and people like Tim Walz now finally saying he's looking into it and stuff. And these people, they're still running around heading there to commit fraud. So here's a story we have. It's picked up by let's see, here's the story. It says, 2 Philadelphia women admit they traveled to Minnesota to cash in on Medicaid fraud. So these were people from Philadelphia. So I'm going to bring up the video now, and you can see the snippets we took out of that.
Federal prosecutors call these people fraud tourists. 2 women today from Philadelphia admitting they came to our state of Minnesota to cash in on a state program meant to help most vulnerable adults. And now they're going to leave as convicted felons. Here's AJ.
A pair of middle-aged church friends walk through downtown Minneapolis. Tourists from Philadelphia. Not here to take in the sights. They came for the fraud.
So yes, you heard that right. The fraud is apparently so easy in places like Minnesota that people are literally heading there just to commit fraud, and they're not even migrating from other countries.
The fraud scheme? Billing millions to Minnesota's Medicaid-funded Housing Stabilization Services, or HSS program, claiming to help homeless clients like Terrence Darby, who was living in a shelter, find a home.
She billed your Medicaid at least $1,600.
For what?
What do you think the help they gave you was actually worth?
0. I mean, I didn't get anything.
So it appears no real services were delivered. Apparently, they didn't have to show much in order to be able to qualify to do this. Let's hear how exactly they committed the fraud.
46-year-old Candace Langley, an Essence magazine curvy model, and 62-year-old Cynthia Allen, a Netflix actress and missionary, both opened HSS companies in Minneapolis after hearing it was easy money. And for a while, it was, as they faked client records and inflated billing, pocketing $3.4 million.
Apparently, they had already had friends who had been convicted for stealing millions this way.
Allen, do you believe this was missionary work you guys were doing here in Minnesota?
No comment for our cameras, but in federal court in front of a judge, they each had one-word comments. Guilty to the charge of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. Solano Simmons is their attorney.
Where both clients were able to accept responsibility for the actions that they took. 2
of their church friends from Philly, a Chanel suspenders-wearing pastor and a Christian university president with a flair for fashion and fancy rides, had already pleaded guilty to stealing their own millions through the scheme.
So these people were all church buddies.
I'm telling you.
And the crazy thing is, it's just like Rand Paul was saying. Look, nobody was verifying anything on the front end. They were just handing them over this money. And so at least the good news is they got caught. I couldn't tell from the story there if it said it was a federal judge. So it wasn't even the state here. This was the feds that did this, because it's that easy in Minnesota. If the feds aren't looking, Tim Walz is just handing out money to anybody who shows up from anywhere.
Oh yes, man. Oh yes. Oh, yes.
Maybe these people from Philadelphia just told them they were from Somalia, and that greased the wheels, right? Because he said, "Oh, you're my kind of people."
Yeah, they look Somalian, of course. They look Somalian.
Yeah. So I don't know, but anyways, it's just, I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean, it's not even, the states haven't even reformed themselves enough, and of course that's led to this most recent turn of events, which is that now RFK Jr. is saying, hey, we are going to withhold $1 billion in these Medicaid payments until both Minnesota and California prove that you guys aren't just complete fraudsters out there, stealing the federal dollars. And so I do have just a little clip on that to show what's going on.
Health Secretary RFK Jr. says every healthcare dollar that goes towards fraud hurts patients and wastes taxpayer dollars. He says some states need to start proving the tax dollars are going toward the right places before the federal government gives it to them.
It smells like fraud. We're not paying for it anymore. Today, we are deferring over $1 billion.
The Trump administration says both California and Minnesota will receive their welfare money, provided they can show better documentation than what the federal government has found so far, which they say was either lacking or suspect.
So what does Kennedy have to say about this?
If Governor Gavin Newsom or Governor Tim Walz wants this funding released, all they have to do is provide basic documentation showing that these services are legitimate and not fraudulent.
Investigators in the administration say billions of dollars are exiting the U.S. healthcare system through fraud, particularly in care provided by unlicensed individuals in unsupervised settings.
Yeah. So there you go. You know, if the feds aren't doing anything, this money is just going God knows where.
God knows where.
Yeah,
exactly.
And by the way, when the feds were being run by Biden, it does sound like some investigations were going on, but they didn't blow up like this, and certainly no big funds were being withheld like Kennedy's currently doing. So, you know, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at.
Well, so far, maybe it will change. But so far, all of this fraud that we have been uncovered, so far, it's always connected to the Democrats. I mean, maybe there might be a Republican here and there that I might have missed, but it seems to be connected to them true and true. And they always hear and these are the people, of course, the advocates of big government, because this is where they could hide our dollars so they could do all the nefarious acts. And this is the horror in all of this. We have one side of the aisle always looking to expand government so that they could hide our money and give it to whoever the hell they want to.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, even though it's sort of baked in with the Democrats, there are Republican grifters as well out there.
I'm sure.
And the Daily Wire, as I said, I would have liked to have been able to edit that down a little bit. There's about a 25 to 30 minute little bit of a documentary that they put together on Ohio, which is a red state. And of course, you know, the Daily Wire is a conservative outlet. So that's interesting, you know, that, you know, when you're a conservative, if you're doing this, you may have some of your own media buddies going after you. Whereas if you're on the left, everybody's just blind to this stuff. So, yeah.
Well, listen, then we have to compliment the Daily Wire for going wherever the facts lead, which is what journalism should be, regardless of whoever get their cookie baked. It does not really matter to me. I really don't care. I want the truth to always be our guide. And if it leads to Republicans in Ohio, I am fine with that. If it leads to Democrats in Minnesota, I am fine with that too. I just want people to go to jail for all of these things all of these years.
Yeah. Well, I certainly second that. And I think that as what we've shown throughout most of the show is that the remedy has to include a diligent media that is out there, you know, it certainly needs individuals to just understand that, look, we can't let government get so big and complex that we can't see the fraud when it's happening. But, you know, the simpler we make it, the easier it'll be for, you know, media, even some of this terrible media. You know, maybe we're blaming them just for partisanship, but maybe they're just not very good at their job either.
Yeah.
So the easier we can make it for them, you know, by keeping government small, so it's easier to see the fraud. That's where you want to go with this stuff. So anyways, we're about time for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, and we've been talking mostly about the Medicaid, Medicare type fraud that has been going on with a lot of these welfare dollars. But as James O'Keefe was talking about in his testimony, you know, there's electoral fraud going on too that he is trying to uncover, that Democrats keep wanting to say isn't happening, and Trump has been saying, no, it is happening, and I had an election stolen from me, is what he's saying. And so he wants the SAVE Act, and he's been going, you know, to the mat to try to get federal you know, standards on elections as far as fraud goes. And so lo and behold, while all this is happening, while this hardball is happening on this stuff, some election fraud was discovered in New Jersey. And it wasn't, yeah, I don't know if fraud is quite the right word, but it is definitely a mistake that caused at least 6,000, they're admitting to, people who shouldn't have been on the rolls, people who weren't citizens, you know, to have the right to vote there. I mean, they essentially were given the access to go vote, and some of them did. And so let's play the video that we have for that, for the Knucklehead Noise Patrol, because this is kind of, you know, Democrats saying it's not happening, Trump saying it's happening, and then they say, yeah, well, Trump's still wrong. Anyway, let's play the clip.
The Democratic governor of New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, revealing that a software glitch had added over 66,000 non-citizens to the state's voter rolls.
In June of 2023, nearly 3 years before I became governor, a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the improper voter registration of what we believe to be roughly 6,600 people in our state. In the case of this error, some individuals indicated that they weren't citizens and weren't eligible to vote, but the software registered them anyway.
Wow, over 6,000 migrants found to be illegally on the rolls in a Democrat-run state while Trump is on the warpath to get the SAVE Act passed. It sounds like both an inconvenient truth and inconvenient timing for the Democrats. Let's hear a little bit more.
The governor said that about 400 of those people cast ballots, but there's no evidence at this time that any elections were swayed. She made the surprise disclosure just days after President Trump's address to the nation, where he claimed that hundreds of thousands of non-citizens are on the rolls across the country. Sherrill promised accountability and said that the vendor responsible for the system is being replaced. She also took a swipe at the president.
As the Trump administration tries to weaponize elections for political gain, I am ensuring that we protect our elections. Let me be clear. Donald Trump has zero credibility on the issue of election integrity.
So maybe somebody could explain this to me, but how does that work? If somebody's claiming that there's election fraud going on and then a Democrat state finds election fraud after they were saying there was no election fraud, and the person who claimed the election fraud is the one with no credibility? Well, anyways, let's hear the White House response.
The White House obviously seized on the news to help push Trump's voter ID bill, writing, quote, Democrat glitch registers thousands of non-citizens to vote. Another reason to pass the Save America Act.
Let's hear a little bit of Abby Phillips and Scott Jennings going back and forth on this as well.
This is a great. They're not voting because they're trying to defraud the system. They might have cast a ballot because they just weren't aware that they were incorrectly put on the voter roll.
They weren't aware that they weren't a citizen of the United States?
No,
They
the question
said in
is,
this instance that they weren't citizens. They were still
is this accurately described as fraud when none of these people tried to register to vote?
Yes, they cast ballots. 400 of them cast ballots. They had to actively go do that. I assume no one voted in their name. Maybe they did. I don't know. But they actively cast a ballot. Did they not?
What I want to put
an illegal alien gets put on the rolls, however they got there, and cast a ballot.
I mean, but you acknowledge that.
And so that's the takeaway that CNN wants to leave you with is, well, yeah, it happened, but there's not really anything to see here. To move the election, it was such a small number.
Yes. It was never widespread, so I don't know why you're worried about it. Oh, this is Trump and his conspiracies and that kind of stuff. But anytime you have any of these glitches, these little glitches, these computer glitches, they always go one way. You hear? They always go one way. They're going to benefit the Democrats. I don't want to relitigate the 2020 election. We did enough of that. But during the 2020 election cycle, the day after the election, they discovered that Antrim County in Michigan, a reliable Republican county, went to Joe Biden. Okay? The next day, they corrected it and it turned out that Trump actually won the county. And to this day, we don't have a clear answer to how they said it was the computer, is what they said. To this day, we don't know. At least I haven't seen anything about it. We don't know exactly how this quote-unquote computer glitch occurred. Okay? I don't know how it occurred. I don't know how it happened. But Joe Biden was first the winner, and then Trump was declared the winner after they fixed the problem. But every single time we have these little computer glitches, we have these little problems, little errors, and that kind of stuff, is there for the benefit of the Democrats. It always happened. It's just a miracle, I think. This must be a miracle of God, that these people always benefit from these little mistakes, these little glitches, these little this. And this woman in Minnesota and in New Jersey, she said only 6,600. I don't know if she said only, but she said 6,600. If they're acknowledging 6,600, I will promise you there's more to come. I will promise you that there's more to come. And you wait and see. This motor voter thing that they do is rife, is full of fraud. And everybody knew that from the beginning, because people just walking into these DMVs, especially in blue states, they're trying to get a driver's license. and they've been automatically registered to vote. Why are you now surprised that there's a bunch of fraud in the system where illegal aliens are registering to vote and some of them actually voting? Why are you surprised? It was just fraud waiting to happen. But you know, the Democrats, they always have a nice explanation. And that fool Abby Phillip, my favorite reporter, if I could call her that, favorite journalist, if I could call her that, is there trying to defend the damn nonsense. What's wrong with these people? These people lost the marbles. I guess they had no marbles to start with.
You know what's a little bit weird too, you know, is that this motor voter, you know, registration, which they're doing, and a lot of people kind of speculated that that was going to happen when they started, you know, that you got people who aren't citizens who they're handing driver's licenses to now, which is, by the way, why we need to have the real IDs now. So all that trouble that you're wondering about why you have to go through to get the new and latest ID card and all this other stuff is because essentially the state's invalidated the veracity of your regular driver's license by handing these things to, you know, by handing these regular driver's licenses to all of these illegal immigrants, right? And so, you know, it's like, and they didn't even say too, by the way, how many of these people were illegal immigrants that might have also gotten the valid. We've just heard they're not citizens, right?
Not citizens, yes.
That would be, you know, kind of interesting to know too, how many were, you know, just flat out illegal immigrants who are getting these things. But it is weird. There's a lot of stuff that's being tied into all this DMV stuff, including the commercial driver's licenses with legals and all that. But yeah, it's gosh darn it, I had something right on the tip of my tongue I was gonna mention. You know, the other irony on all this is with IDs, they keep telling us that you shouldn't have to have an ID to vote. So why are they tying it into the DMV then, right? Why would they register these people automatically if you just need a gym card or something else to go register yourself to vote? What does it matter then at that point? You know, why are they, you know, tying it? Because they're saying a lot of their voters don't even know how to get to the DMV,
right
to get an ID. So
no, you could see. I mean, you could see how evil some of these people are and how racist they are. Okay, so an illegal could walk across the border, and an illegal could figure out how to get driver's license. An illegal could figure out how to get even a license to drive those big 18-wheelers, you know. But an American citizen who happened to have the same hue as me, you know, he too damn stupid to figure this out. You know, the illegal who can't even speak English. We have a case of somebody, I don't know if it's in New York or somewhere, who the name is unknown, but they have a license. I don't know what state it was, but the name is unknown, or whatever they had. But you know, that person was here illegally. So the illegal could figure this thing out, you know. But you know, we black people, we too damn stupid. We just too damn stupid to figure out how to get a regular driver's license, a regular identification to vote. If oh God, poor us. Oh my goodness gracious.
You know, the other part of the irony of all this is aside from them trying to act, I mean, you see so many of them saying, well, we'll wind up disenfranchising too many people of color if, you know, which is what that's the nice way they're saying that, you know, that black people can't figure out how to vote.
No, we're too damn stupid.
What Democrats are saying.
We're too damn stupid, Jason. Yeah. Could you figure it out?
Right. But then the other attack they take is, well, you know, it's unfair to have costs because it costs to get your ID updated, like when they were talking about real IDs or, you know, your passport or whatever the hell it was that, you know, the SAVE Act was going to require. And I'm thinking, you know, you guys are the people who make the million hoops that everybody has to jump through to do everything in life. And there's fees attached to all of these cards and everything that we have to get. And then you're telling us that, oh, but for voting, it's a problem. But for everything else, that we want to do, let's just, you know, charge the crap out of you for all of our stupid programs.
you know, and these nasty Democrats requires a government issue ID to get to their convention.
Yeah.
Government issue ID to get in their convention. But and well, we can't require that for voting. Really. So entering your convention is more important than our vote. Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Just think about how racist their convention is, that they disenfranchised all those people who couldn't figure out how to get IDs from going to their convention. I mean, they completely disenfranchised them from the process. Kind of like the way they do with their super delegates and everything else, right? That they just disenfranchise everybody, even if you have an ID. They just say, well, you know what? Hillary and some of these others, they count for a hell of a lot more than you do.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Good Lord.
Well, anyways, I don't know. I thought this was, kind of an interesting hearing. That's why I wanted to do the show on that, because it really ties that nexus that, hey, look, we've got to have some independent reporting, and government is just it's going to fail at doing a lot of these things. Now let's bring back Walter Williams as we exit the show here. But
yes,
it really kind of hits the nail on the head. Most of the stuff, not necessarily the election stuff, but all of the kind of these welfare type programs that are going on in all these states. It's it really comes back to people think they're being moral by handing this responsibility to government, and just look at the chaos it's creating. Look at all the fraud and the
yes.
And nobody's even feeling good about it. I mean, who the hell in this whole thing, do you see that is saying, hey, I felt good about that money that I sent to government to deal with all this stuff? Nobody. So, I mean, or Abby Phillips or any of these people we've been talking about, they could reach into their pocket and feel even better by sending a little more.
Of course. I'm sure Abby's making, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million a year. Well, go. You have plenty of money. Reach in your pocket and pay it. I don't. But I think Walter Williams is demonstrating a very important point. Okay. And that is, forced compassion is not compassion. That's what that is. He's trying to show us. And I think that's a very important message that we should take from that quote.
Yep. No morality or real compassion and when force is involved.
Yes, exactly.
Compassion and real compassion. So
yes.
There you go. Well, if you're watching this show, by the way, too, I give a shout out to our friends who are manning the Libertarian booth. Maybe I'll make it there next week. I don't know yet. I've been so busy. I haven't been able to, kind of got the information late, but at the state fair, check out the Libertarian table at the California State Fair. So they're there, maybe find a little bit more about some ideas that can push liberty out there. I think the Republicans might have a table out there too at the fair. The odd thing, the kind of the underground dirt on all this is people who are Democrats a lot of times will come by that Libertarian table and they will complain to us about the Republican table. Stop. They'll say, oh, they made me so angry. And then they're like, I didn't see a Democrat table. Well, yeah, the reason you didn't is because they've got you locked up here in California. They don't need to spend money on a table.
Exactly.
So that's why they really don't care. They've got your vote pinned up.
Yes. Lock, stock, and barrel. Yes.
Yeah. But anyways, it is kind of fun being in a position where, we're the sort of alternative to the Republican. Some people, bring these confessions to our table about how angry they got when they went by the Republican table. So yeah, it's I suppose I'd be maybe just about as angry if I went by the Democrat table.
Indeed. We gotta stop calling the Democrats Democrats. With the rise of the Democratic Socialists of America, we gotta start calling those people communists. That's what we gotta start doing. Yes.
By the way, that's what I wanted to do the Knucklehead Noise Patrol on, was that interview that DSA guy had recently on, just because it's a nice thing to talk about property rights. They literally are trying to flip the script and say that that the Constitution doesn't guarantee you a right to be able to make more than 10% on a return. So therefore they think they should be able to keep you from making more than
that. Yeah.
That's their logic, right? Well, you're not guaranteed the right to make that much. So we think, therefore, we should be able to force you not to be able to.
Not exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that'll be a topic for another show. But thanks so much for watching. And until next time, think about what you can do in your community to move the ball for liberty. And until then, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.